All right, let's jump right in. Picture this. It's the year 676 AD. We're on a cold, windswept sea where, believe it or not, the fate of an entire continent is about to be sealed. And we're not talking about some land skirmish. No, this is the final, brutal showdown for who rules the waves.
You know, this quote from our source material, it really gets to the heart of a huge historical puzzle. We all think we know the story of the Battle of Jeremgang, right, or Gibbelpo. But what if that name, the one we see on the maps, is just, well, a label? What if the real story, what this place actually meant, has been completely washed away by history?
So, for hundreds of years, the story has been pretty straightforward. The Battle of Gungang was the grand finale of the Silla-Tang Wars. You know, the one big fight that locked in Silla's control over the Korean peninsula and basically told the mighty Tang Empire, thanks for playing, but it's time to go home.
And here it is. This is the spot we've always been told the battle took place, right at the mouth of the Gyum River in what's now South Korea. It's what's in all the history books, the place we all just kind of accepted as this spot where this legendary victory went down.
But what if that whole story, everything we thought we knew, is built on a simple mistake, a case of mistaken identity, for a river? That's the huge question our source material throws at us. It challenges us to stop looking at the peninsula and start looking at a much, much bigger map.
So let's dig into this other perspective, what our source calls the continental history view. The core idea here is that to get this battle, you first have to get Silla. And Silla wasn't just some kingdom tucked away on a peninsula. No, it was a major power player with deep, deep roots right in mainland China.
And here it is. This is the bombshell claim from our source. The real Jeomgang, according to this theory, wasn't in Korea at all. It was right here, hundreds and hundreds of miles away, at the mouth of the massive Yangtze River. We're talking about the economic jugular of the entire continent.
Okay, so this is really the key takeaway. This place wasn't just some fort on a river. It was basically Silla's economic capital on the continent. It was the central hub for everything, all the money, all the goods, all the resources flowing from the mainland. So, losing this place, that wasn't just losing a battle. It was losing the entire continental dream, the whole thing.
With stakes that high, you can bet the stage was set for an epic showdown. You've got two of the greatest military minds of the time about to face off. This is more than just a fight. It's a true clash of titans. It's that classic story, you know? David versus Goliath. Brute force against brilliant strategy. So, in one corner, you've got the Tang Empire, led by the legendary general Xu Rengui. His game plan was simple: overwhelm them. He had these giant warships that were basically floating castles. And in the other corner, you have Silla, led by the super clever commander Shiduk. His fleet was made of these nimble, flat-bottom ships, custom-built for tricky local waters.
And when the battle starts, it looks like a total disaster for Silla. I mean, the sheer size and power of the Tang fleet is just insane. They're just ramming and crushing the smaller Silla ships, sending them scattering. You got to imagine, for Xu Rengui, this must have looked like a sure thing. Victory was right there for the taking. But this is where things get interesting. This is where Commander Shiduk's genius really shines. See, the Tang fleet saw a bunch of ships running away in terror. What Shiduk saw was his plan working perfectly. This wasn't a retreat. Oh no. This was a lure. He was pulling that massive enemy fleet exactly where he wanted them, right into a trap.
So, round one is over, but now the real war begins. And this wasn't going to be some quick one-and-done battle. This was about to become a long, drawn-out, brutal war of attrition, fought in this confusing maze of waterways.
And Shiduk's master plan was just brilliant. Look at this. He basically took the Tang fleet's biggest advantage, the size of their ships, and turned it into their biggest weakness. First, he lured them into these shallow, tricky waters. Then, those giant ships get stuck on mudflats they didn't even know were there. And that's when he unleashes his smaller, faster boats. They come in like a swarm, striking fast and then vanishing before the big ships can even turn around. It's guerrilla warfare at sea.
And get this, the records say they fought 22 times. Just let that sink in. Not one battle, 22 separate, brutal fights. It was just this relentless, exhausting meat grinder of a conflict, all designed to just break the enemy's will to fight.
By this point, that once mighty Tang Navy is totally helpless. They're completely out of their element. Their giant ships are basically just sitting ducks, stuck in the mud, unable to move. Shidduch's knowledge of the local tides and channels was so good, he literally weaponized the water against them. The hunters had well and truly become the hunted.
So after all these skirmishes, the Tang forces are exhausted, they're demoralized, they're trapped. And Shuchiduk knows, now's the time. He rallies his forces for one last, decisive push to finish this thing for good.
And the Silla fleet just charges, like a spear right into the heart of the disorganized Tang navy. And in the middle of all that chaos, the one thing you never want to see happen, happens. The banner on Shui Rengui's flagship, it catches fire and falls into the sea. Just like that, the Tang command structure completely collapses.
When the fighting finally stops, silence. And the records say 4,000 Tang soldiers were lost. This wasn't just a loss, this was an absolute annihilation of their main fleet.
And the fallout from this was huge and immediate. First off, the war, it's over. That legendary general, Shu Rengui, stripped of his rank, sent into exile, totally disgraced. And the Tang Empire, pretty much the superpower of the world at that time, would never again challenge Silla's control of the sea. Game, set, match.
So, what's the big deal about this one battle? Why does it matter so much in this new version of history? Well, because it wasn't just about defending a border. It was about building an empire built on controlling the sea.
According to our source, this single victory gave Silla control over the entire Yellow Sea. It basically created this massive, unified economic zone, a pan-Yellow Sea empire, that connected their lands in China with the Korean peninsula. And the whole thing was policed by their unbeatable navy.
And what's really cool is that this legacy of naval power didn't just stop with Shidayuk. The dominance he established on the seas, it paved the way for another legendary figure in Korean history you might have heard of, Jang Bogo, the king of the sea. He's the one who would go on to control these very same trade routes.
You know, when you boil it all down, this whole perspective leaves you with a really powerful idea. We so often just accept the history we're taught, right? But what this suggests is that sometimes the real story isn't in the books. Sometimes it's hidden in the land itself, in the sea, just waiting for someone to look a little closer.
And really, that's the question I want to leave you with. If a battle this important, this decisive, could be misplaced and misunderstood for centuries, it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible stories, what other forgotten histories are still out there, just hidden beneath the waves?